ready to go.
Okay. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Saratoga Springs Library Board of Trustees. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. The first order of business is the approval of last month's meeting minutes. I think, Terry, you had a...
Yeah, I just had a small correction in the
financial reports.
financial report. First bullet should read December prepays and January warrant summary sheet.
That we accepted those reports.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
correction has been made.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So with that correction, do I have a motion? Well, is there anything else? Anybody else have any other issues with this? If not, then do I have a motion with respect to the minutes?
I move to approve the meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. The next is the approval of the January prepaid checks. And they're number 68576 to 68577, totaling $1,126.16. We also have to approve the February warrants, number 68578, 68647, totaling $105,643.42.
I move we approve the warrants and prepaid checks.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, and then the approval of the financial reports. The first would be the January prepaids and the February warrant summary sheet, which we just looked at. The next would be the budget report. Is there anything significant in the budget report? Any changes?
I don't see anything that's unexpected. I don't know if Eric had anything to add.
No, I agree. Nothing unexpected. I don't see any changes at this time.
So we're not going to no need to reallocate at this time.
No.
Not at this time.
Okay. As to the income report,
Again, nothing unusual here except for, we're down quite a bit in the copies and printing and the fines and fees, and that has to do with our closure.
if there's no other comments or observations, I would take a motion to approve these three reports: the January prepaids and the February warrant summary sheet, the budget report, and the income report.
I move we, sorry.
That's right.
I move we approve the financial reports, the January prepaids and February warrants, the budget report and the income report.
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Those reports are approved.
And Sue, did you get that? Was a motion by Manita, seconded by Janet.
Is Sue here? Sue,
Yep, Sue is here. Yep.
Sue, I thank you for taking on this task. We really appreciate it. Frees Janet up to concentrate more on the meeting. As far as the president's report, I don't have a president's report today. Any public comment that we know of?
None that we know of.
Correspondence and communication?
None.
Mr. Pulver's report.
So as you know, we spent much of the month of January with very few to no members of the public in the building when the COVID positivity rate in the counties skyrocketed after the holidays. The good news is they came down, and they're coming down quickly now. As long as we don't. Hopefully, we won't have a post Super Bowl spike or anything like that. But they came down significantly enough that beginning last week, we were able to start up our contactless holds pickup process, which this time around ran very smoothly, much more smoothly, I think, than the first time around that we did it. And that's owing a lot to, I want to say a special thanks to our two Jennifers, Jennifer Ogrodowski and Jennifer Ferris, for devising some of the protocol for doing this, and especially to Brendan Kozlowski, who's our web administrator, for coming up with a way for people to self-serve making reservations. The first time we did it, it was all done by telephone, and it was a very, very labor-intensive process. This time around, we were able to make use of our calendaring app, our LibCal events calendar, to allow people to make their own appointments, and then people who weren't comfortable doing that to call and have that done for them by library staff. The other thing that we did a little bit differently this time around was that the first time around we checked things out for people the day before their appointments. This time we didn't check anything out to people until about 45 minutes before their appointment. And that way we avoided a lot of running around for things that had come in to fill holds between when we checked them out last night and the time of the appointment. And that was that kind of system devised by the Jennifers, and it worked for us really well. So thank you for that.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. And the even better news, I think, is that the numbers have come down so significantly that beginning this morning, we are allowing people in the building without an appointment to pick up their holds and to browse the entire collection.
That's so good to hear.
And we think, if the numbers hold, if there's not a spike after, like I said, Super Bowl Sunday, then it's very likely that we'll be able to reinstate some of the appointment-based services like computer use and local history research beginning next Monday.
And you were very busy, you said?
Pardon me?
You were very busy today, you said.
We were very busy today, yeah. And so, yeah, people did, and yeah, we were a little bit rearranged because we had to move some shelving, et cetera, to accommodate all of the holds that people have placed. So hopefully this week, a lot of that will get cleared away now that people are able to come into the building without an appointment, and we'll be able to get stuff back together again, hopefully before next week.
And Ike, what decision was made about President's Day?
President's Day will be open from 10 to 5, which is what we would normally have done, originally have done. So we heard your concerns. And especially since, all of the numbers seem to be pointing in the right direction for us to open up a little more broadly by then.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that it's going to be open. That's good.
So that's the reopening status. So strategic planning, I wanted to let you know that the consultants have wrapped up their rounds of focus groups. They've closed the survey. They've got a bunch of data now to look at and to do a little bit of analysis on. And they're looking to schedule 2 retreat times that are going to be, I think, a time commitment. And they would like looking for about 10 to 15 people to be on this committee for strategic planning, and for the complement of the people on the committee to be a mixture of trustees, community members, and library staff. So I was trying to recall who on the board. I know that you appointed a couple people to the long range planning committee, and it would seem to make sense for those folks to be the people who are in the
That would be myself and Terry, and I don't have the list. I can't remember who else that was. There was a third.
with the Janet, is it?
Was it Janet? It probably was Janet.
It was me.
Okay.
Janet's hiding.
And so they're looking to do this. I mean, if you see, they would want people to be in both of these sessions. The initial mini retreat, which would be over 2 days, and then a break in between that mini retreat, and then a full retreat, which would probably be over 3 days, and with 2 hours a day for each of those. And they're looking for, when we looked at their calendar, and if anybody else was in that meeting has a better remembrance of this than me, I think they were looking at the second or the first or the third week of March. Does that sound right, Jen or Tara?
It was the second week, and the March has 5 weeks. So
Does it have 5 weeks? That's what I'm getting confused.
And the 4th week of March.
Okay, so the second and 4th week of March.
So Ike, what will be the process for setting the dates?
I think probably the best thing to do is maybe once we've identified who we want to invite to do a doodle poll for people's availability, or some kind of poll to determine if people are able to devote that much time.
But you wouldn't necessarily want all 3 trustees on that, because you're going to want to mix, right? Is that too many, or?
It is a little difficult with these relatively small numbers of people that they want to have on the Zoom meetings, and they want to keep it small just so that people have a chance to participate.
So at least one from the strategic planning committee should be there, and maybe more depending upon space.
Right.
Are any of the meetings on a weekend?
They haven't been scheduled yet, but we could potentially do that. That might make it easier for working people to participate.
And Ike, do I understand it correctly that it would basically then be 4 to 5 days in a row?
It would be not necessarily in a row. So the first one would be probably 2 days in a row, then with a break over a weekend or a while for them to take the feedback that they get in that first meeting and apply it to the second set of meetings. And then probably, I think we would be looking toward the end of a week, if not a weekend, to schedule the final 3 days, because they did ask for some space in between them in order to analyze the feedback.
And is it so when they say like 2-hour sessions or 3 2-hour sessions,
Right.
are they talking about, so they're talking about over a couple of days would be.
Correct.
Over 3 days would be the 3 days. Okay.
Right. And my sense is that the sessions might build on one another so that, so they wouldn't, because we did ask this question, do you, when you say 3 2-hour sessions, do you mean over 3 days or 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon? And their clear preference is to do it over multiple days.
Okay, so we'll just, I guess, Janet and Terry and I will wait to see the survey or something.
Right. Well, if you, during those 2 weeks, if you have any conflicts or times that you're not available and you want to send them to me in advance, then that might help drive how we issue the invitations.
During week 2 and week
4 of March.
week beginning the 8th and the 22nd.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. And then the other thing that is looming large is the budget vote and trustee election for the next fiscal year. And we do have it on the calendar for April. However, there's still some uncertainty about whether anything is going to be able to happen in person in April, whether we work with the school district like we did last year. And there are some open questions. I've been in touch with Sarah Dallas. She's asked public library system directors and the Division of Library Development about how we think this is going to look. There is a little bit of urgency because we've got to prepare the budget, we've got to get the legal notices out, and there are some oddities this time around, particularly in the trustee election. So what is typical is that the petitions for trustee elections require 25 signatures. The way the law is written, they require the greater of 25 or 2% of the total number of people who voted in the prior year. And since we partnered with the school district last year, we had about 10,000 votes, which would mean that the trustee candidate would need to get 200 signatures. So
where is that in the education law?
it is, yes. So there is, so NYLA has, or DLD has asked the governor if he can make an exception to that, and probably through executive order, and do the usual 25 rather than, because it is very unusual for us to have that many people vote in the election.
I know there is some push by New York State Democrats also, because, like the local stuff petitioning is also starting now.
They've changed that, which makes me think they would change it for this, because they cut
Right.
the candidate signatures to 25% of what they normally need to get. So I would think they'd make this accommodation too.
Which is exactly what I was saying, that there is a movement in that direction. So hopefully it should work out.
Well, that's helpful. Yeah. So are you in contact with the school district?
I haven't yet, because I wanted to wait to see if there was any news coming out of the state library or the governor's office about how this would be handled. Really, just like everything else, we thought that we would be way past this point by this time.
but they were very cooperative last time, right? I mean,
They were indeed, yeah. And, you know, and I do want to reach out to see what their plan is for their vote, because it's follows very closely on the heels of ours normally.
so you're a little in a bind, I guess, or we are. There's no calendar yet for deadlines.
Correct. And, you know, and we may have already gone beyond what the deadline for the date that we originally set. So we may have to, at some point, have a special meeting, or we may want to do it now to reschedule the budget vote from the day that we had originally scheduled it.
What would you do? Would you like more, gather more information?
Yes, I'd like to have yes, I would like to have maybe a clearer picture of how far out we want to bump things if we need to.
Okay, I mean, if we need, we can always have a special meeting or something if you're really crunched.
Right.
You know, if we're crunched. Does anyone else have any thoughts about that? Okay. Okay.
Again, another scheduling issue is in the very last sentence of your report, you talk about scheduling a budget workshop.
Correct, yes.
So is that something that we can act on today, or is that also something we need to wait on?
I would love to get something on the calendar. We don't have a budget yet, but I can tell you what I think what our leanings are. I think we're probably leaning toward another zero growth budget, looking at potentially a pay free and across the board pay freeze. It's hard to, I think, imagine given the state of the world, that there would be much support for raises for anybody really at this point. So I think we would be looking at that and potentially making permanent, or at least for the next year, some of these changes that we've made where we're devoting more resources to digital materials than to, not more, but shifting more of our resources from print materials to digital materials, with the notion that probably, you know, given the uncertainty with whether people are going to come flocking back to us, even if even if the world gets back to a more normal place, and that we've driven a lot of our traffic online already, and we have a sense that people are going to continue to make more use of those things. And it's likely that we'll see some increases in our utility costs. You know, water always goes up. We're coming to the end of our electric contract. And Rick says he's anticipating somewhere in the 20 to 25% increase in new contracts. So just those are some of the highlights I think that we would be looking at. But the bottom line number remaining the same.
And what happens at the budget workshop? Is that simply a presentation to the public of
It is.
what the parameters are?
Yeah, so normally there are two things. There's a board meeting with board discussion about budget priorities and action to approve the budget. And then there is a budget presentation prior to the vote, which is exactly what you say, that this is the budget, this is what happened last year, this is what we're anticipating to happen next year.
Do you want to plan, Ike, on doing the one related to the board at our March meeting?
I think we probably need to do it sooner. If we are going to have a vote in April, we need to have a budget in place at least 45 days in advance of or we need to begin advertising at least 45 days in advance.
So when do you expect to have the budget in a place that we could, as a board, look at specific numbers?
I mean, I think probably within the next week.
So then us meeting maybe the week of the 22nd?
Yes, if that's possible.
Okay. Ike, did you want to say anything about the use statistics?
I don't think that there's much to say beyond there. I did this time separate out the Zoom programs from the meetings, just to give you a sense of for example, then you see these morning meetups. These are staff meetings that we do on alternate Fridays, or when there's a big topic to discuss. And we usually get somewhere between 50 and 60 staff members joining those meetings, which is a lot of people on Zoom to have a discussion. But a great variety of programming going on. I think that's that. And if we're ready to move on to department reports, maybe.
I think so.
Okay.
Ms. Ferris.
Hi, I have really nothing more to add. I figured since we weren't really open last month, I'd give you different statistics that are more fun and a little meaningful. This is just a small sample of the most checked out titles in 2020 from the Saratoga Springs Public Library collection. And the next page is showing, as we've been showing, all the users, the new users using the service in the past year, and how it continues to grow. Oh, and then finally, all the continuing education programs that the staff participated in when they weren't able to do library work at home.
And during those that time that we were closed with no members of the public in the building, staff, especially, I wanted to say thank you to Jen's, the technical services staff who actually toted in luggage and filled it up with items to be prepared, to be made shelf ready, and drag them home, and did all of that preparation work from home. There might have been a sense from some people that we weren't working hard while we were closed, but in some sense, it always feels like we're working harder than ever when we're trying to serve the public without seeing them in person.
I would just say that working at home, some things are much harder than I anticipate. Working at home has its own special challenges. Well, thank you, Jen.
And Laura is here if you want to.
Okay. There's a lot of stuff here, so I just like to highlight, we had the Roots of Black Music in America with a train through all the different types of music from slavery times all the way up to the present. And Carlos was really amazing. He drew a mixed audience. You could see on the Zoom little things, kids dancing around and older people too, just listening. And he's in Staten Island, so I'm And he's very open to coming back and doing a larger program when that happens. And he wasn't all that expensive either. I was kind of surprised. So that was our most popular program. And again, the bags to go, the craft bags and all are really, really popular and have been going out a lot since we've been opening just today. And I'd like to commend Sarah Durbin. We have 72 people in our kids version of Saratoga Reads, and people still want to sign up, but I mean 72 people on Zoom is kind of a lot to begin with, so we're cutting it off there. So we're excited that that's going to be very popular this year.
That's great.
Yeah, and those programs, the Saratoga Reads Junior, the format, we've had a long-standing partnership with Skidmore and the high school to train Skidmore students and high school students. They're trained by Dr. Catherine Golden from Skidmore to lead elementary children in discussion of the Junior Companion. And that's what those 70-some kids have signed up for.
That's great.
So Jeno is not here today, but again, I would like to commend her staff on really the tremendous creativity that they've shown in coming up with programs that can be presented over Zoom and with handling all of this reservation making and to get people in the building to get their holds picked up. I have had the great pleasure of being nearby when they're talking on the phone with people, and our staff is so kind and upbeat and happy. You can tell that the person on the other end of the phone is grateful for that contact from them.
Okay, I had some, sorry about the feedback.
Yeah, sure.
Questions about Saratoga Reads.
Yes.
And maybe with Jeno absent, the questions can't be answered. But first of all, am I right in understanding that that's a library program?
You are correct, yes.
Okay. I had two concerns. One is the publicity. I really have seen very little publicity about the selection of the Carol Daggs book. And I thought there was a missed opportunity over MLK weekend when Carol Daggs was actually doing a presentation. I think that was the same time as the announcement was being made, not to tie that to her presentation. And the second question I had is about the availability of the book. Because this is, as you know, it's a self-published book. I don't know that it's even available in local bookstores, and the website doesn't give any information. The Saratoga Reads website doesn't give any information about how to get a hold of the book.
So we have, so our announcement was timed for after that event that Carol had scheduled before we had made this selection. We have 50 copies of the book in the library that are available to be checked out. And that wasn't so easy when we were not open to the public, but now that we are again, it is available. You are correct that it is not available in local bookstores. We had tried to make an arrangement to make that happen, but that had to be an arrangement between Carol and the bookstores that we couldn't get involved in. Although we tried to insert ourselves and make it happen, but it didn't. It is available. Her Facebook page, she's got 2 of them, has order forms for people to order it directly. So, and we can certainly add a link to that to the Saratoga Reads page.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate, because I think people are going to assume that it's a book that's available in the way that, past selections have been available. And because this is different, I think it would be good to notify people how they can obtain it.
But we do, like I say, we have 50 copies in the collection for circulation.
It might even be worth saying that as well on the announcement.
It is typical that that the Saratoga Reed selection is the most circulated item of the year in the library during the year that it's been selected.
Yeah, I like that idea, the link. That's a good idea.
Last I knew, she was still working on potentially having it available in Northshire. But I know that originally they couldn't come to terms necessarily for having it in the store.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Tara.
Hi there. Before jumping into my report, Jen O had asked me if I wouldn't mind just pointing out some of, I think, the highlights of her report pertaining to some of the contributions being made by part-time librarians and computer clerks. So I'm just going to read an excerpt of what she forwarded to me and asked that I just share with you. Just thanking Mary Ratzer, Jill Kobayashi, and Caitlin Sheldon, who have been working on COVID-related resources for both staff and patrons. Jasmine Gage, who is a part-time member of our staff, has been working on lid guides that have proven to be very popular. Amy Hughes, Jenny Chilrud, and Zoe Nusianen have been helping out with Saratoga Room projects. Miriam Meyer has been working on a virtual book display. And Mary Ratzer also has been working on equity toolkits and continuum. So this is a representative of our part-time personnel who have been put to good and gracious use for us. So I just wanted to give that shout out on Jen's behalf while she's on vacation this week. So my report really, again, just reporting on the amount of staff development that happened, especially during the period of our closure, and that continues to happen. But the meat of this report has to do with asking for consideration and hopefully approval of COVID-specific vaccination leave, which is not yet a state mandate, but will most likely be when the budget goes to vote for April 1st. So the governor has suggested that employers, regardless of public, private, statewide, give their employees 4 hours of paid time off, not charging to any other kind of accrued leave for the purposes of getting the COVID-19 vaccination. We, of 100 employees, I would say we have a large number of folks by virtue of their age. They are eligible to sign up to get the vaccine now. And I believe with the broadened categories of those experiencing disabling conditions or health compromises, we might have even more employees. And we do have so many folks working for us on a part-time basis that don't receive any kind of paid time off. So the discussion came up about potentially extending some type of compromise until there is such legislation in place that mandates us to give this leave, much like we do for cancer screening leave, that we make 2 hours of paid time off available to any staff member who is able to get an appointment to be vaccinated during days or hours when they would otherwise be scheduled to be working with us. So I've drafted this COVID-19 vaccination leave. It's embedded in the body of my report, and am looking for approval of that or discussion of it.
I had one question, Tara, which is the governor putting forth reimbursement to employers for offering this leave?
I don't believe so. I haven't heard that mentioned. It's much like, Katie, we currently offer 4 hours per year for every employee for cancer screening. And it's the same thing. The employer is not reimbursed for that. So it's another employer funded benefit that's extended to all employees. So this sounds like it's going in that direction as well. So it would not be like the FFCRA leave, which we do receive tax credit for, and that's on the federal side. This is a state mandate, and so far it seems to me the state mandates don't have that same kind of offsetting reimbursement.
Okay, I was just curious.
And this would be for 2 times, right? Because you have 2 shots. So
So it would be, so what the governor has proposed is a total of 4 hours across potentially 2 shots, not 4 hours per shot. And again, because this is not yet mandated, the compromise that I'm extending is 2 hours. Again, whether that's for 1 or 2 shots. And again, asking that employees only take the total amount of time needed. Some folks might be able to get vaccinated very locally and not require the full amount of time. Others might require more time, especially if they're traveling to Plattsburgh, in which case at least 2 of those hours the library would offset. The rest of it would either be unpaid leave, or for those of us that accrue paid time off, they could charge the additional to their vacation, personal, or sick leave.
So the 2 hours is for both shots.
That is correct. Total 2 hours.
I know you've offered this as a compromise, but I feel like we should have the full 4 hours. I mean, just because I know a lot of people are not finding vaccines here in Saratoga Springs, and it makes sense. Like if you're going to Plattsburgh or Potsdam or SUNY Albany, it takes time to get there and back. That's just my 2 cents on it. I think we should have 4 hours instead of 2.
I agree with Linda.
It would be nice to have more experience with this.
The hope is that by the time the budget passes, it will coincide and the 4 hours is approved or is mandated, that will also coincide with the time when the vaccine is much more widely available and people will actually be able to get appointments and use this time. So this is really just an acknowledgement, a stopgap. We didn't want people to continue necessarily to be disincentivized from getting the vaccine if it cut into their work time. So also we're mindful of wanting to minimize the amount of additional liability incurred by the library before the mandate goes into effect, hence the 2 hour as a compromise. But I will respect obviously whatever you would like to go with. I just wanted to put this out there since it's again not required of us at this point.
It would be good to know, I know, where people are getting appointments, and if it is the Plattsburghs and the Uticas. I know that some people get them locally, but we just don't have a sense, I guess, unless you do, Tara, of where people are getting appointments.
Only anecdotally from staff, I'm aware of one employee getting the shot in Plattsburgh, another one with a spouse who got the shot in Plattsburgh. My mother got an appointment in Albany in early March. I'm sorry, I don't know if there's somebody else trying to speak, but anyway. So I think appointments are now opening up in in more local places. And I don't know for anyone who shops at Hannaford, in my weekly Hannaford email, they now are advertising that they're getting some vaccines. So I think that more of the retail pharmacies are likely to start getting supply. A neighbor was called by a local CVS because he must get his prescriptions filled there and was basically offered the vaccine because he was on their list of people currently eligible and told that they had some available, come on in. So I wish there were more hard evidence of what's happening, but like everything is kind of all over the board right now.
Geez. Is there anybody who doesn't think that it should be maybe 3 hours or 4 hours more time?
So Frank, I mean, if we keep it 4 hours, and vaccines start opening up here in Saratoga Springs, and people don't need the full 4 hours. They just take whatever is required, right? So having the 4 hours just, I think, gives flexibility for people who are getting the vaccine appointments in Utica and Potsdam and Plattsburgh, like we have been seeing. But I mean, like I said, that's what I think.
That's a good point.
We should see more appointments in Saratoga, but it's still a little bit away.
I think that's a good point. Janet, do you have an opinion on this?
Can I ask my question first, Janet, before you respond?
Absolutely.
Is, do you then, if it is mandated, do you then end up having to get proof that someone actually did it? So since you've had this experience with the cancer screenings, does someone actually have to come back with a doctor's note to say that they actually had the cancer screening?
To date, we have not been requiring it. It's written into the language of both the draft policy for this as well as for the finalized cancer policy, that the screening policy, that the library may request documentation. But to date, we've taken people at their word.
Okay, Janet, you're up.
Well, most people I know who've gotten them have gone to Plattsburgh or to Utica or to Albany at this point. But I think that CVS, Price Chopper, Hannaford, Walgreens, a lot of places around here are saying they are going to be getting vaccine. But I don't see why we can't say it's 3 or 4 hours, and then if they use only half an hour or an hour, then they use that amount. If that's the amount the state is going, I mean, it seems like maybe they chose that for a reason. That's just my opinion. I'd like to know, I always say, I'd like to know what other libraries are doing.
Nobody that I've talked to is doing anything with the exception of, I believe, Bethlehem Public Library. I believe what they've extended is only to their part-time employees and their full-time employees who are getting appointments during hours when they would normally be scheduled. I believe they're asking them to charge their available leave accruals, vacation, sick, and personal. None of the other libraries that I've talked to locally are offering anything at this point. And a quick online search of New York State public employers' COVID-19 vaccines showed, I think, Tompkins County is for their public employees, like Public Works and so forth, is making 8 hours available. I think maybe they possibly misunderstood the governor's proposal and believe it to be 4 hours per shot instead of 4 hours total. So Tompkins County is doing something where they're giving 8 hours of paid leave to their employees. So according to the lawyer that we work with, I bounced this off him before proposing this. He said, quote, "It's the Wild West." So there's really no uniform anything happening or being proposed, and that's again where the compromise came from as well, was from Mike Bullock at Bonchonk and King, because I guess, again, what I'm trying to sort of hedge against is any, additional liability incurred to the library, but also wanting to recognize that folks are likely to start making their appointments and wanting to incentivize that in some measure. We're not requiring vaccines at this point. The jury's out on that, or even if we can in our field of work. We're not healthcare workers, and this vaccine has been approved for emergency use only by the FDA. So there's a lot of legal questions about requiring individuals working for us to be vaccinated. But we can always incentivize and encourage it, and that's what this is intended to hopefully do.
Right, the liability to the library is far more if people don't get vaccinated. So we do want to try to encourage it, I think, within what's legal. But.
I mean, I think I would be willing to go to 3 hours and then see where we are, to expand it both visits, given some of the distances that right now involved. And Manita makes a good point that as it gets closer, they might not use all that time, but maybe it should be available to them, at least for those people who can't get appointments that are close.
All right, I just want to make sure I understand what the expectation is. If the governor does mandate leave, the expectation is that it would be 4 hours. Is that correct?
That is correct. Basically, in the absence of a current mandate, we're coming up with our own benefit.
Right.
As soon as the governor's mandate goes into effect, we're hoping that happens, then that would be replaced. That would replace this current policy. So someone
Right.
wouldn't necessarily get,
Right.
additional time. But
Well, it seems to me if that's the expectation, that just by virtue of consistency as well as the other reasons that have been given, I think it would make sense to allow the 4 hours in advance of the governor's mandate. In other words, so the people that are covered now, that take the policy as it is effective now, don't feel that somehow they've lost out. I mean, that's already happening now anyway, because the people that had to go to Plattsburgh are jealous of the people that got to go to CVS.
Right.
So is there anybody who would be against expanding it to 4 hours? So
Do we need to make a motion on this or I'll
well,
make a motion?
I-
Sorry, go for it, Frank.
I think we would adopt the policy proposed with the change that it would be 4 hours instead of 2. And I think that would be the motion.
Right, so I propose we will change the policy that currently was suggested for 2 hours for COVID vaccination leave without needing to apply for other types of earned paid time off, and change that to 4 hours.
I will second that motion. So we're going to adopt the motion on the table is to adopt Tara's policy change suggestions with, but it would be for paid up to 4 hours instead of 2, as is currently in the materials before us. If that motion is on the floor, who is in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there anybody opposed to the policy or the change? Okay, that policy is adopted with the 4 hours.
okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Tyrus, is he here?
Yes, I am.
How are you?
Tired.
Is there anything you'd like to highlight?
Other than, really working on contracts and contractors. Not really. It's pretty well stated. There's just a lot of changes, and we're just trying to make this happen as quickly and efficiently as possible. It's really all I have is I'm becoming a pest and just keep following up and just trying to keep updated on where we are. The age of our elevator is definitely a challenge, and we're doing what we can at this point in time. I'm hoping to have a quote here shortly for an electrical electronics complete upgrade. And I just keep following up.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. I think we're getting snow soon.
Yeah.
So Ike, the new old, let's see, special committee reports, there's none.
And I think we've covered both the old and the new business. already.
Yeah, that's what I I thought. Okay, then we are going to adjourn and the board will meet in an executive session to discuss a particular personnel matter. And we are adjourned.
Frank,
Thank you.
are we going immediately to the executive session? I think it was scheduled for 6:30, but can we get in?
I thought